But now, as we progress into the Balance of the United We Strike marathon, I have coming up next Am Rosen and Dr. Dean Lloyd, and sure enough, just as I'm about to bring them in, I lost Dean. All right, let's see if we can bring him back in here. But in any case, I do have Am Rosen, so we're going live with them right now. It's all yours, gentlemen. Take it away.
Well, thank you, Gary. And hello, everybody. My name is Am Rosen, philosopher, author, health consultant, facilitator of the evolutionary unfoldment of human potential. I want to say thank you. I've been listening to the show today, and a lot of great information coming out. But I'd like to, a lot of valiant people who are reporting on things that need to be reported on. But I'd like to bring up a couple of ideas. Let's start off with that there must be host receptivity before any parasite can take an effect. Now, usually we think of parasites on the physical level. We're surrounded by viruses, bacteria, but if the immune system is strong, it doesn't receive them. It doesn't allow them to take root in the body. But we're also, as you've been listening to, surrounded with a lot of other kinds of social and mental parasites. And the thing is, there is a host receptivity in people that allows them to be susceptible to a lot of the manipulation and nonsense that's going on. Last night in our show, Dean and I, we were talking about warring for peace. And we set up the thesis, antithesis, synthesis idea. And it is in thesis and antithesis that the war comes from. Because as soon as you pose an idea that this is correct, this is the way it should be, this is what we believe, this is how we think, this is what we have faith in, well, it's not complete. Because you're saying, of all the things available, this is the way it must be done. Immediately you get an antithesis. No, it's not. Wait a minute, you forgot about that. This is doing damage over here. Thesis and antithesis bind each other in a battle of denial. But to deny something, you have to be attached to something. You have to hold on to it in order to get away from it, in order to fight it. So this is something that's been going on for a long, long time. The answer is, of course, synthesis. But what is true synthesis? Before I talk about that for a second, let me say that there is nothing new in the nonsense that's going on, except for the degree of technological sophistication and what that provides for. But the patterns are all the same. I talked about host receptivity. You look at what's going on. You see we have the technology to veritably make this world work in an amazing way for everybody. The purpose of society is to foster, to nourish the evolutionary unfoldment of human individuality so that people don't come together herded like animals, but they come together with free will. They're self-actualized. And from that, they create the means to utilize the resources of society to further foster that creative potential of unfoldment so that people amalgamate. They come together because they want to be, because they see the chance to further their ends. But when you don't have that, and you don't right now, this is a goal. It's not something that's been achieved. You have, well, there's only so many resources. Everything, and who's going to control them? Now, somebody can become very disciplined, very competent, very lucky in terms of opportunities and take advantage. But they may not know how to further things. They may be, as many people pointed out, compensating for deep-seated psychological problems they don't want to even look at because they've been running, but they found a way to bolster. There's only so much water out there. There's only so much land. Who's going to control it? We have millions, hundreds of millions, billions of people living in concentrated areas. They're dependent on a pipeline. Who's going to control it for what means? Now, I talked about thesis, antithesis. No, you don't. Yes, I do. No, yes, I do. No, you don't. What about synthesis? The basis of synthesis is understanding. Let me distinguish that from intellectual comprehension. You can think all kinds of things. You can spot the wrongness in something. You can spot the feasible appropriateness in something. That's not the same as knowing how to access and utilize the energies in the most adequate, appropriate, effective manner. So part of what my focus has been since I was a very small boy, when I became aware of this, of course I didn't understand it, but I was aware, was I knew there was something wrong in the human psyche. And over the many decades, I've been able to figure out exactly what's been going on. Why people, against their reason, desire, and better judgment, trash themselves. Why they are susceptible to this kind of invasion, psychological, emotional manipulation. Why people that have gotten ahead with their imbalances can reduce everything to a ledger, to statistics, and stop dealing with the human factor. Obviously, if they can't deal with that human factor as a totality within their own psyche, they can't deal with it within yours. What they can do to themselves, they can do to you. And the basis of this big screw-up is the feeling body. And this is what people have not understood. You can quote the most scientifically validated, the most logical, reasonable things in the world. And when you're disciplined and in your space, you may be able to hold true to those things and achieve something, make something happen. But most people are not run by their intellect. The few that see the weakness of certain emotional patterns they don't understand will discipline. But that also cuts them off and makes them lopsided. Feelings are irrational, illogical, and unreasonable. They are simply the patterns of response that were locked in subconsciously. But we have a lot invested in there, a lot of fear, a lot of drag lines. I mean, how do I motivate myself? Well, I may not be happy, but at least I've got some sense of I'm somewhat in control. All this is passé. It's passé because the technological advances of media, education, the scientific breakthroughs require a new dynamic. Right now, to paraphrase, we've been trying to put a new dynamic into an old mindset, and it's not working. It's tearing it apart. But in order for us to operate from a more comprehensive, integrated place, where each person, whatever their inclinations, disposition, cultural orientations, feels open and secure, knows how to access what's available to them. People have different motivations. This is what we need, and this is what's missing. This is why people on the top of the aristocracy of privilege, that means whoever is in control, get to push things around. But they themselves are hurt and wounded. And it's time for everybody, wherever you are in the pecking order, to grow up and truly not just comprehend it, not just deny the negative. That's helpful. You got to hold back the negative because there's a lot of it out there with one hand, but you need to move ahead into what is the evolutionary potential, not as an idea, but as an actualization. And while you're doing that, you have to strike a balance. The balance is understanding. Okay, much more to say, but Dean, please jump in and speak your piece.
Absolutely. Hello, everyone, and thank you, Am. This is Dr. Dean Lloyd. I'm talking to you in a little town in Colorado. I just finished playing a concert. We had a concert for lunch at this festival we're having out here. And it was last night we had this wonderful show about warring for peace. It was an interesting topic because it's the irony. We're always looking for that war to end all wars, right? Or never have another war. We want it to just stop. It'll never be resolved if you're coming at it from the point of view that it is a war. And the point that we were making last night, we had someone who was who was in the chat room and asked the question, what do you do if you don't know another way? In other words, he was trained to feel empowered. He was in the military, and he was trained to feel empowered by fighting. In other words, the only validation that he was experiencing was that he had a fight to fight. In other words, he couldn't conceive of a peaceful world, and that's where we have to come from. The way that we deal with so many conflicting points of view isn't by bullying ourselves in. It's as Anne was mentioning, he talked about the thesis antithesis place where we come from. Are you safe or are you in danger? As one example, and in this case, he was pointing.
All right, you'll have to excuse me for just a moment. I'm not sure what happened there. I see we dropped Dean right in the boy. He was just getting to the punchline too. Am, what are we going to do with him? We're gonna have to get some duct tape.
He's going to come back. He'll be back, and he has a lot of lines to punch, I'm sure. Well, let me continue until he jumps on, and let me know when he's back on, please. So we were talking last night, that by trying to fight something, you're bound to it. Every system, every social system has rebellion built into it. That's why it's always guarding itself. It's always fighting. But another thing we got to was it's not only the war without, whether it's war on the land, it's the idea of control. But it's the war within inside each one of us that makes us susceptible to that. Most of us are at war inside of ourselves between what we think and what we feel. And we're always rationalizing. Well, if they wouldn't do this and I could have that, she would be more like this, and blah, blah, and blah, blah. Who we are rationalizing to are the negative feelings we have inside. That no matter how intelligent or brilliant or scientifically validated our thought processes may be, we still feel that way. We can't help it. Feelings control the physical response, whether it's in our bodies or the social body politic of the entire planet. You can tell yourself all kinds of things. You can refuse to engage in certain feelings. That just shuts you down and gives those irrational impulses more power over you. Everybody, you can smile, get elected. Everybody can be patting you in the back and saying you're God's gift to the world. But inside, you can be giving yourself an ulcer, predisposing yourself towards cancer. Because we talk about gut emotions. Because regardless of what you think or avoid thinking, everything you feel registers on the visceral organs. Now, as we evolve, and it's interesting to trace the development of the human species through these levels of consciousness, how they've come online, the kind of things we've locked into, the kind of things we've kept ourselves from, and the kind of imbalances it's created in order to get ahead here or there. But as we evolve, we have to learn to take over control of our own bodies. You won't find chemicals or high-potency extracts growing on trees. We certainly can synthesize a few things from that. When you're running wild in nature, the natural cueing signals react instinctively through the genetic pattern, and you get what's available. By the time you can develop culture, society, high-speed technology, then the body, which you've now kind of domesticated, you have to tell it what to do. It can and will adapt, but in and of itself, it doesn't know how to adapt. You have to tell it what you're aiming for, how to utilize these things, which requires a basic knowledge. Not enough for you to have to work on other people, but a basic knowledge of how the body operates and how your feelings do. One of the things I've done in developing a process, you can find an outline of it on my website, is to break the grip of the subconscious, permanently, non-regressively, to make it malleable to your thoughts, and then teach people that are interested how to rewire their feelings on an ongoing, flexible basis so that you bring the dynamic of the body into alignment with who you are, so the body stops bearing the brunt of this battle between who you think you are and how you feel you are. Dean, did you just come back online? No. Okay. So I'm sorry we lost him. But this is one of the things that the Dean, Dr. Lloyd, and I are talking about on our show. We want to give you the insight, the understanding. For most of you, this is new stuff. We want to demystify It's all consciousness. Every technique, ancient, modern, East, West, Orthodox and conservative, or a lucky bohemian improvised bastardization, comes down to two things: focus and concentration. You're learning to access different levels of perception and bring them into a focus, concentrate them, and achieve certain access to energies and spatial relations. The problem is, for too many people, this is a mystery. It's hit or miss. Something happens, you walk into it, and you say, oh, this must be the thing that'll give me access. I'll keep doing this thing. You make a ritual out of it. The funny thing is, even if your ritual is somewhat good, you're shut down and limited by the ritual after a certain point. So what we're talking about is evolving the species, giving humanity a psychological upgrade so you are not susceptible to manipulation. So you can take hold of some of the brilliant information that's out there about health and the body and use it not only to safeguard yourself, but to facilitate a higher quality of health and a range of motion, which will in turn will feed your mental processes, which will in turn allow you to make choices not based on fear of lack and need and irrationality, but from having access to the whole bowl of wax. Think of the nervous system, these levels of perception, like an artist's palette. But you don't want to confuse who you are with the technique that allows you to process. You want to be able to dip into any level you want, rearrange it, mix them and match them at will, or leave them there and be totally, completely aware, comfortably aware, knowing you can interact or not at will. Then, when you're given a chance to play, to socially involve yourself at whatever level, go for it, because you can't be trapped or cheated or stuck. But if you don't have that kind of inner security that comes not from belief, but from actual understanding of how to access and deal with these energies, then you're going to barter. You say, okay, well, I don't want to be hurt. You may hurt me. Okay, I'll touch you this way. I'll go along with you that way, but only if you do this. And that cuts down the spontaneity. It cuts down the clarity. It limits you and makes you susceptible to the very manipulations that so many good people have been talking about. Gary, how are we doing here? Am I still on my own?
You're still on your own. I'm working on it. We get Dean in here, and then we seem to be having some trouble. But I'm going to try to bring him in by telephone at this point.
All right. Well, let me know. I'll keep going for a little bit. And there's so much I would like to share with all of you. I'm not guessing, but I don't want you to believe that. Right now, people tend to believe almost anything. One of my psychological ethical etiquettes is that if I or anyone else claims to actually understand something, and boy, would I like to see this applied across the board in every walk of life, then in terms of what I'm claiming to understand, I must be able to show you exactly what it is, how it's constructed, what its interactive range of motion is, and how you can independently access it for your own use, in your own way.
And I think we've got Dean.
All right. Dean, I've been going on, but love to hear from you. Welcome back.
Thank you. So this was I thought, got a little ringing going on. There we go. Someone's knocking at the door. Someone's ringing the bell. Am, as you were talking, I caught bits and pieces, but what had occurred to me is that when patients come to see me and they're in pain, emotional pain or physical pain, I tell them, I say, can you imagine what your life would be like if you didn't have that pain? How much energy would be available if you weren't constantly stuck in the negative emotional pattern, whatever it would be? They're worrying too much. They're afraid that they won't, accomplish something. These are things that we have control of, but we're very often not given the tools as children. We're not taught this, how to control these feelings. We're going to provide you with tools to do this. And this is unique. No one's talking about the things we're talking about. I call it the show that doctors aren't, that doctors haven't been or aren't talking about, because it's so new. but it isn't necessarily difficult to understand, but we want to take you through the stages so that you can see for yourself what it's like to have the ability to make choices, which is where real power comes from. And you can decipher whether or not it's appropriate or adequate for your situation. So this is why we have the time for this particular thing. We're talking in terms of medical, health conditions also. This is not abstract. This is clear, and we have the means of bringing you in full circle. Now, Am, I didn't catch what you were talking about before. Can you sort of elaborate a little bit?
I'm talking again about how most people are defeating their own best interests and why they're susceptible to the kind of manipulation that's going on, and that this experiment of free-thinking democracy, which is just at its infancy, is there to facilitate humanity's growth of each individual. But right now, people that manage to get into a position of power, they want to play off of your weaknesses. If you didn't have these susceptibilities, if you knew how to manage the body, not only not to get sick, but to feel incredibly healthy, if you knew how to resolve all these conflicts, as Dean mentioned, and I've mentioned many times, think of how much energy is being wasted in picking on yourself, worrying yourself, aggravating yourself with anxiety. Think of and how that obscures your awareness and hurts the body. As I say, gut emotions. When you feel these things, the body takes them seriously. It doesn't understand. You're supposed to understand. Think if that energy isn't wasted. It's still the same reality set around you, same book, same table, same chair, same street. But now you're seeing it in a different way because you have a different energy level. Now think if you're not only not wasting your energy, but you are finding intelligent, functional ways to bring more energy into the body and mind. Still the same apparent reality set around you. Your way of interacting with it and with people becomes highly different. But as long as people are susceptible to the manipulation of their own uptightnesses, people can't really hurt you directly on an emotional level. They can only play off of the inadequacies they've clocked that you have. But anything that makes you uncomfortable, from the slightest, mildest momentary irritation to a full-blown, I can't get out of it, it's tearing my life apart, is never anything more than a misunderstanding of how to more appropriately, adequately, and effectively deal with the energies. It's not wrong, it's not bad, it's just not in keeping with the comfort level of your dynamic. It's not working for you. And as Dean said, we don't just talk about these things in an abstract way. We are talking about the integration, facilitating the integration of mind and body, because they're really just levels of perception in the same overall awareness circuit. Dean, you want to jump in on that?
Excellent. Yeah, just something that came to mind. We're in a very, let's just say that there's been a lot of tension for a long time. We're wanting to attract people of any profession, any walk of life. This is not selective type of work. We're talking about works all the time, every time, without exception. And when you can say that with certainty, how many psychologists or psychiatrists or people in the position of, steering the society have the ability to say that they have an answer, and they will be, and that they can say that it's absolutely so. We're not trying to boast, the work by saying that it's absolutely working. We just know that this is a system that has been, we're overreacting to situations so very often that the clarity or the ability to sort out problems that are societal, environmental, emotionally based are not clearly understood. You're always stuck in the cycle, and you never break it until you truly understand how it got there. So this is the history you'll be hearing from us, how it got there, and also what to do to get out of it and what to do for yourself. Two healthy people, we're practitioners that have been doing this. Am's been doing this 30-some years. I've been doing this 26 years. We have a lot of experience under our belt, but we don't do this by, separating ourselves. And, Einstein had a problem. He was able to speak some very intelligent in scientific theories and some beautiful, work, but he had a small group that he was, able to associate with. We're ready to get out there and talk to the public in all different, aspects, but we can't do this without getting your questions. And that's one of the things we beg for. We ask people to write us in and give us, because we have our outlines for the shows, but we would like your feedback and comments so that we can help direct you through this.
Guys, I've only got another minute or two I can give you, so please, a little bit of blatant self-promotion. Tell these folks where they can find you.
All right. You can please visit my website. It's www.lifegame, Lifegame, like the game of life, lifegame.com. Now, there's a lot of things on there. You'll find you'll find an archive of state of mind, quality of life broadcasts. You can listen. They're all listed in order and by topic. You'll find a podcast library I've started on health and consciousness and intimacy, much more to do there. You'll find some sample excerpts from my two most recent books. But if you look on the front page, the home page in the vertical accordion section, you'll see the process. That's a nutshell outline of what I'm talking about. 5 steps to self-actualization. No mumbo jumbo. You also see something called the Geigers, which are 3 ways, if you use them, and there's a little art to learning to use them, that will always allow you to gauge where you're at within yourself.
All right, 30 seconds. Dean, some quick self-promotion.
Go for it.
Got it. Thanks, Sam. Accutone.com. That's ACUTONE.com. And you'll see 3 sections. One will be my book that I have that's the work of finding frequencies that match level of tissues and the relationship to your health. Also, the clinics I have that include oxygen therapies and oriental medicine, naturopathy, and so on. And also on the right, you'll have the United We Strike and all of our radio shows free right now. They're archived for free. This is unique. So thank you very much. Are you all set there, Gary? Did we do our job?
Oh man, I'll tell you took every second I could give you. I got to take us out with some music real quick. Thanks very much.